Let me just start by saying, I almost understand what my father was going through. Battling for custody of a toddler, working a shitty, low-paying job while living in a fire-trapped slum house, that kind of pressure would make anyone a little crazy. I almost understand. I don't know why he felt the need to strap me in a high chair with a handful of Cheerios and a sippy cup of water every day. Why he left me sitting there, shooting me a guilty look as he pretended to leave for work. And I sure as shit don't know why he took a floral sheet off the couch and then came back in to torture me. I was between 2 and 3. I was stuck in that high chair for hours at a time, sitting in my own filth. I was already having a pretty shitty time even before my dad put a sheet on like a dime store ghost and came after me. And God, do I remember that sheet. It was this gaudy 70s design. The flowers were mustard colored on a magenta background. Dad would pretend to go out the front door, which was conveniently not visible from my high chair, and then after about an hour, he'd don the sheet and tiptoe into the kitchen. He spoke in this cracked, high voice when he had the sheet on, and used baby talk to mock me. The worst part for me was the fact that he didn't even sound like himself. It was like he turned into a cruel stranger under that sheet. The torture was uniquely horrible each day. Some days he would tickle me by jabbing his fingertips into my ribs until I screamed. Some days he would make a big batch of flavorless oatmeal and feed me. And the oatmeal was only ever 2 temperatures, either scalding hot or freezing. Whichever one it was, he would feed me without waiting for me to respond, jabbing me in the gums or the soft palate with a spoon and giving me bruises. All the while he would screech at me to open wide for the airplane. Open wide for the point. A few times he brought a ripping comb, the kind you use on poodles and other dogs who can't shed. Suffice to say, my hair still grows weird in those patches. He never changed my diaper. He didn't take me out of that chair or give me any other food. And every day, right before he was supposed to be home from work, he'd slip in the next room and tuck the sheet back on the couch like new. Then he'd go out the front door. In an hour, he'd come back in the front door with his concerned father disguise on. He looked so guilty and sick when he saw me, pulling me out, cleaning me off. He would apologize and hold me, rock me gently. The contrast between this gentle, caring person and the floral sheet monster would have driven me completely insane if we'd lived there much longer. Luckily, my father eventually earned enough money to move us to a shitty rental house. The couch and its hideous floral sheet stayed behind. And there was a nice abuelita living next door who would watch me during the day, so no more torture. Eventually, I'd go live with my aunt and uncle during my teens. I understandably had trouble trusting anyone after that, so I never really connected with anyone. Family, friends. I also had an irrational fear of floral patterns. I once saw an ugly pillowcase with the same pattern hanging up in a thrift store. I had to be taken from the store by security. My dad drifted away from me. He never retired. He was still working well into his 60s. He sent me a little money every month when I lived with my aunt, and then when I moved, I didn't leave a forwarding address. I would have been happy never seeing him again. But when my grandfather's wake rolled around, I changed my mind. I was going to confront him. The house was full of grieving relatives when I arrived. I almost didn't recognize my father. Age had shrunk him, made him wizened. He looked like a man of 160, not 60. When he saw me, a look of utter grief came over his face. I knew then that he'd come there to talk to me too. We went to the porch, where cold had driven most of the other mourners back inside. We both just leaned on the old wooden rail for a minute, saying nothing. I know it don't mean a whole lot, but I'm so goddamn sorry for what I put you through, kid. I felt like I had to, you know? I saw red. Had to? On what fucking planet do you live where any of that seemed necessary? My dad shrunk back. I guess I must have been shouting. When he spoke again, he spoke really fast, like he was trying to pull one over on me. But you have to understand, I was watching your mother go downhill, I was working slave hours, I still couldn't put food on the table, I had us living in that slum house where the doors were never locked properly and there were fleas, so how the fuck do you justify the torture you put me through every day? Tell me how any of that was necessary. All the color drained from my father's face. I had no choice, I told you. I couldn't afford childcare. I didn't trust anyone living there, so you just had to do the stupid sheet thing? My dad blinked. He gave me an odd look. No? I used to buckle you in your high chair and then go to work. I couldn't find anyone to watch you, so I'd put you in the high chair and then leave you there for hours. Alone in that apartment. Between the ages of 2 and 5, my family lived in a house that a friend was renting out. It was a nice house. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a big kitchen. The whole package deal for only $250 a month, and that included utilities. We were told when we moved in that there were only 2 floors. The ground floor and the upstairs, where the bedrooms were. I remember when we first moved in, and I was exploring the backyard, I seen a window at the very bottom of the house. For some reason, it had unnerved me so badly that I immediately burst into tears. And since my parents couldn't get me to explain what had spooked me, they simply took me inside to calm me down. The window was a source of fear and unease for me until we moved out when I was 5. My parents had assumed that I would grow out of it, and I did, but not until we moved out. I can never place why it creeped me out so badly, but I just avoided that part of the yard like it was a plague. My most vivid memory of my childhood happened in this house. I had been asleep in bed one night when a strange thump from downstairs woke me up. I've always been a light sleeper, but I fell back asleep too quickly for the thud to really make any difference. I woke up again to a heavy, awkward breathing in my ear and someone kneeling next to my bed. When I opened my eyes, I saw the pale, thin face of a man peering back at me. I screamed, he booked it, and my parents brushed it off like it was a nightmare. But they let me sleep in their room for the rest of the night. A week later, my 13-year-old sister woke everyone in the house up by screaming at the top of her lungs. She claimed that she woke up to a man, matching the one I had seen, crawling into her bed. She described his breathing exactly as I remembered it, causing me to burst into tears. My parents were not pleased. My sister and I slept in their room. Food disappeared really quickly. Mom always just said that it was having 2 grown children and my dad in the house. Sometimes things would be moved from where we left them the night before, but that was also just brushed off. My sister assumed the house was haunted. My parents assumed she was just being paranoid. For the next couple of years, this continued. Food disappearance, things were moved, and we occasionally had nightmares about the same strange man. When we tried to convince our parents that we weren't just dreaming, they brushed us off and insisted we were. This obviously caused a lot of tension between my sister, me, and my parents. The night of my sister's 16th birthday came the encounter that brought the end to our stay there. My sister woke us again, screaming at the top of her lungs, but it cut too quickly to be normal. My parents, concerned, went to check on my sister and found a strange man in dirty clothing pinning her down and covering her mouth with his hand. A fight broke out between the man and my dad, but the man was nearly 72 and weak from starvation. It didn't last long, and soon enough the man was subdued and the cops were called. My mom kept my sister and me in the living room while the cops checked out the rest of the house for more people and for signs of a break-in. Instead, they found a door leading to an unfinished basement. When closed, it blended in with the wall well enough that unless you knew it was there, you could never see it. We'd never even noticed it, and apparently the family friend who owned the house hadn't either. There was one little room full of pictures of my sister and me in the yard, taken from that basement window. The reason that I'd always been so frightened by that window finally came to light. The man had been taking photos of my sister and me for years. That first day, I must have seen a flash of some kind, or maybe the man himself. The man was mentally unstable and claimed that he was in love with my sister and that I was his perfect son. He also claimed that since my sister was now 16, she was old enough to give him another child. I'm not certain what happened to him, but I do think that he was sent to an asylum instead of a prison. Out of the many fucked up things that happened to me over my life, this one still takes the cake.